Everyone, Ollie here, and this is my review of The Pirate Planet, the second story of the 16th season of classic Doctor Who, starring Tom Baker as the Fourth Doctor. The Pirate Planet is the 99th story overall, it's 4 parts long, and is written by Douglas Adams, who is best known for creating the popular series The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and this is also my 100th review for this channel, so yay! So more on the Pirate Planet. The Pirate Planet is the second of 6 stories that make up for the Key to Time storyline, and the plot of the Pirate Planet is as follows. The Doctor and Romana arrive on the planet Zanuck, looking for the second segment of the Key to Time. Although priceless gems are scattered on the streets, and the night sky changes with the dawn of each new prosperous age, then the town of folk live in fear. For in a fortress overlooking the city, the terrifying space captain is in control of most destructive force of the most destructive force in the galaxy. So that is the review of The Pirate Planet. I think The Pirate Planet is a very good story, and Douglas Adams did a very good job in his debut story for Doctor Who, even though there were some noticeable flaws. However, before, when I watched the story for the first time, I wasn't really impressed with this story, but while you're watching it now, especially, it's very good. The production was very good here. I like the set design, especially the Xanax set, which looked very nice and clean, and the captain ship, which looked very spaceshipy. The location filming look was very well done. It looked very modern, and looked very clean as well, considering the fact this is in the late 70s, so it was a very big deal. The costumes were great as well, and I really liked how creepy and pale the Mentiads looked, especially. And I think how their paleness and the mystery surrounding them made them like effective, and I'll get into more into those group of characters in a bit. The script is very good, and the direction by Pennant Roberts definitely deserves a mention. I think that was very good as well. The plot of the Power Planet was very well done and very well executed and very well handled. I liked how easy the plot was to understand, and the idea of pirates and the megalomane and the queen that lived for like hundreds of years was like a maniac. Like, we're using Xenon to hollow out to fit engines into it so it can travel through space and time and materialize around other planets. In effect, it actually like depletes the planets that materialize around of all its minerals, and also killing every single life on that planet and the planets they materialize around, including the planet Calufrax itself. We don't actually see the second, including Calufrax. And the second segment of the Key to Time was actually the planet Calufrax. We don't actually see the segment itself, but in the following story, actually do. And I think at the start of the following story, do you see the Doctor Romana actually trying to carry out their plan, and in trying to have this tiny planet of Calufrax fall into the TARDIS, so the Doctor and Romana can actually convert it to the second segment. And this story had a few great moments as well. I mean, they mostly came from the cliffhangers, and imagine, especially the part 3 cliffhanger. Imagine you're watching the Pirate Planet for the first time in 1978, and then you see the Doctor seemingly fall to his death at the hands of the captain. That would have been a very big shock. Well, considering the fact that the whole Doctor actually does fall to his death 2 years later, and obviously the resolution, it turned out it was that Doctor was just a hologram, and it was a bit of a cop out, I must admit, but it was still a very good cliffhanger. The part 2 cliffhanger was good as well. It was a good one as well. This is where the Doctor, Romana, and Kimus were confronted by the Mentiads on the dried up planet of Califrax, and Kimus noticed that the guy they were looking for was actually a part of the Mentiads. I've forgotten his name, but I probably have it written down somewhere. But yeah, and also like the part. It was also a very funny part as well when when the TARDIS landed in Zanuck, and the Doctor was trying to ask people for information, but they're just simply ignoring him. And then K9 suggested to the Doctor that they should allow Romana to ask the questions, and the reason why, Romana's prettier. And I also like the stand-up between the Doctor and the Captain in part 3, when the two were just pretty much having a screaming scenery chewing contest. So, on to the acting, which was very good as well. Tom Baker, great as always, and I love the dynamic that he and Romana have. And as I said before in my previous review, that Now, the Doctor's also trying to find ways to outsmart Romana by disproving her theories and shooting on her suggestions, but Romana pretty much fondles the Doctor's attempts in doing so. And the Doctor's comedic side is actually showing here once again, and you can really tell he really had fun making this story, and I especially like the part when the Doctor was entering the the captain's ship, and the Doctor was on this fast escalator of ground floor, whatever the thing was. It was pretty funny. You can tell he did have a lot of fun. He was pretty energized as well in comparison to other stories. I think she was great as Romana, and I do think that this is actually one of her best performances, if not her best performance. And to Mary Tam, I think she even said that The Pirate Planet was actually her favorite story she's actually filmed. And Romana does have a fair bit to do in the story, and I kind of like that. And as you guys probably would have gathered, if you watched all my reviews, you probably have. I always mention how I like it when companions actually have stuff to do with the plot. I did like how she was able to shoot down one of the captain's men when her and the Mentiads left the captain's bridge. She was arrested in part 2, and she does tell the captain about the Doctor's TARDIS. Yeah, I do think that is Romana's flaw, and I think that's actually, and I think that's actually, and actually gets worse as the season actually progresses. And Romana is actually quite naive, as we saw here, and even in the Rebus operation, we saw a bit of Romana's naivety when she failed to notice that Garen was actually a con artist, and how Garen was able to steal the tracer from her and he used that to try and find Garen because the Jethric was actually the segment, and Unstuff actually had the segment. Unstuff actually had the Jethric, so that's how that part comes about, and we definitely see more of Romana's naivety as the season progresses, and in season 17 as well. Oh, and yeah. Yes, I think this is definitely one of Romana's biggest flaws, but I do think it's a good flaw to say the least because she may be slightly smarter than the Doctor, if not. But obviously, the Doctor does have more experience under his belt, so they kind of pretty much had to go for that. They had to make sure that Romana's not just a Doctor clone, to say the least. But I do like how the Doctor does teach her how to avoid these mistakes during her time in the TARDIS. Kanan was very good in this story, and he's very well utilized as opposed to just being left in the TARDIS when the Doctor leaves him. And actually, Kanan actually does leave the TARDIS as soon as the TARDIS lands on on Zanuck, as opposed to and he's actually appeared in all 4 parts outside the TARDIS, and that was quite good as well. Even he's either with Romana, but I think a good part of the beginning of the story, I think he was with one of the other female characters in the story because the Doctor told him to watch her. And I also liked how Kanan was able to shoot the captain's robot parrot. He spends a few minutes trying to kill it, and then the Doctor and Kimus were in the room where the Queen was, and then Kanan just shows up with the dead parrot in his grasp. So onto the side characters, and I think they're all quite good. We had Kimus. He was a friend of Mueller's and Prelix, and he was a native of Zanuck. He does help the Doctor by taking him to the captain's bridge to rescue Romana when she's arrested, and when he discovers the captain's true plans by using the other planets, he vowed to gain vengeance on the planets that were destroyed by the captain. I think he was a very good character to say the least, and he does aid the Doctor and Romana into defeating the captain and Queen Zangzia. And then we had Mula, Prelix's sister, and she went to try and look for Prelix when he gets taken by the Mentiads. And so Kanan is obviously sent to the Doctor to look after her. And she also later aids the Doctor as well. Prelix, Mula's brother, after Califax is destroyed, he gains psychic powers and is taken by the Mentiads and later joins them. He later helps the Doctor to defeat Queen Zangxi and the Captain as well. So I think he was a very good character, and I think and also you had the Mentiads. They were zombie-like beings that were native to Zanuck, and they had psychic powers as a result of the destruction of the planets that were destroyed by Zanuck. Every time a new Mentiad was born, their powers were added to make something called a Gestalt mind, and then they later helped the Doctor and Romana to destroy the time dams when the Captain and Zangxi were killed, or the Captain was killed, and Zangxi pretty much, her projection just fades out. So obviously when dams are destroyed, I think Xanaxter pretty much just dies as well. And we had Mr. Fibuli. He is the assistant of the captain. He was very faithful of the captain and pretty much had to comply to every one of the captain's orders. And when the Doctor prevented Zanuck from materializing around Earth, which actually destroyed the bridge, and that's how Fibuli died. And the captain was saddened by this and wanted to avenge him by saying that Fibuli was actually a good man. And I actually do kind of like that scene. It actually does show the captain's vulnerability, but we'll get on to more the captain a bit later on. All these characters, I would say that the Mentiads and maybe Prelix, to an extent, were more interested in the others. I was more intrigued on how about their psychic powers, and I liked how he and how they were and the Doctor were actually how they were able to join minds and envisioned a literal spanner in the works. That's how they were able to prevent Zanuck from materializing around Earth. So that was a pretty fun scene to watch. On to our enemies. First off, we had the captain. He was a ruthless space pirate that was reprogrammed to a cyborg after his ship crashed on Zanuck. He did not tolerate failure whatsoever, and he would even send his robot pirate to kill any of his guards when a failure occurred. He was a very good villain, and he does have like a sensitive side to him, as I mentioned earlier, when Mr. Fibuli died. And even though I do think he was a bit of a pantomime villain, but I think him not being the true big bad of the story was a good twist, and the true big bad turned out to be Queen Xanxia, the evil queen of Zanuck, and lived for hundreds of years. She's said to have staged galactic wars so she can demonstrate her true power, but this actually backfired as it ruined Zanuck itself, and obviously she was like starting to like deteriorate, so Xanxia created a hologram of herself and pretended to be the nurse of the captain whilst she was in the other room, and she was like suspended in time or something like that. And so the reason and because of Queen Xanxia, we actually found out her true alternatives for using Xanax to jump to plunder planets for rare minerals, and unfortunately killing life on other planets as well. All this was done so she can actually remain youthful, as the Doctor and Chemist discovered her frozen aging body. She was a great villain, and I think she was a lot better than the captain himself. She later killed the captain and he tried to turn against her. She was a bit shouty, but her villainous motives probably made her more of a formidable villain. It's a shame that the true Zangster doesn't actually show up until part 4. Fun fact, she was initially going to have been the Master's daughter and later a female incarnation of the Master, which we do get several years later, but Graham was actually vetoed those ideas. He didn't want any more Time Lords other than Romana being on Doctor Who, to say the least. So on to the faults of this story. Even though this story was paced very well, I do think most of the momentum was lost around part 4 and the pacing did slow down a little bit. Also, I do think the story could have been a tad bit more serious, and it did when Zangxia came around, but I do find that the power planet was a bit too comedic for my liking, considering the fact there was the underlying theme of mass genocide because of all the planets that were plundered were like pretty much sucked out by Zanuck and that element of the humans dying or people dying on those planets were mentioned only like a few times, and I think the mineral aspect was actually mentioned more than the people dying, and I think that was a bit of a misfire there. So, but I don't think that really takes away from much of this, for most of this story. But I do think it could have been a bit more serious, to say the least. So to conclude this review, I think the Pirate Planet is definitely one of the best stories of the Key to Time storyline, and is the best of improvement to the Rebos operation. So I give the Pirate Planet 8.5 out of 10. My next review will be the third story of the Key to Time, The Stones of Blood, which is Doctor Who's 100th story overall. So thank you for watching this review. Please let me know what you thought of this review and the Pirate Planet itself. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already, and join my Discord server, and it's in the description box below if you want to. Until then, see you later.